Dear students, today we'll discuss a story Professor Shonku and the UFO, written by Satyajit Ray, the Indian filmmaker. So, this story is prescribed in your complementary course paper 1, Popular Literature and Culture. Now, before moving on to the story, let's have a look at the author, who is Satyajit Ray. Maybe all of you might have heard the name Satyajit Ray, but it can also happen that you won't be that much aware of who this person is and what is his contribution to the film industry as well as to literature. So we'll get to know about Satyajit Ray before moving on to his story, Professor Shonku and the UFO. Satyajit Ray was an Indian filmmaker, scriptwriter, essayist, author, magazine editor, calligrapher, music composer. He has excelled in many fields. He was born in Calcutta. In fact, he was the one who brought Indian cinema to world recognition. His first film was Pather Panjali. He is considered as one of the most influential and greatest filmmakers of the 20th century. When you look at his short biography, his father was Sukumar Ray, who was a writer, and mother Suprabha Ray. He graduated in economics from the University of Calcutta. He started his career as a junior visualizer in 1923, and then in 1947 he founded the Calcutta Film Society. He started as a film director in 1955 and his first film was Pather Panjali. He was drawn into independent filmmaking after meeting the French filmmaker Jean Renoir, spelling Jean Renoir, two words, Jean Renoir, Renoir. And also he viewed that Italian neorealistic film Bicycle Thieves. Now that was instrumental, or that inspired the filmmaker in Ray. Now his first film Pather Panjali, it won 11 international prizes, including the Best Human Document Award at the Cannes Film Festival. So Pather Panjali was released in 1955, and after that, two other films named Aparijito, which was released in 1956, and the third film was Apur Sansar, APURSANSAR, and it was translated as The World of Apu. So these three films, Pather Panjali, Aparijito, and Apur Sansar, they form the Apu trilogy. Apu trilogy. That's one of the important contributions to Indian cinema. And apart from this, he did scripting, casting, editing, and he designed his own material, everything. And he received many awards, including 36 Indian National Film Awards, Golden Lion Award, Golden Bear, Silver Bear, Academy Honorary Award, and even the Government of India in 1992. He was awarded with the Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award. Now, it is said that he lost his father at a very young age when he was just 3 years old. His father died. His father was a writer, and even his grandfather, Upendra Kishore Ray, he was also a writer and philosopher. And so, after the death of his father, he had a very tough life with his mother. They had to survive in a very meager income. So, but anyway, he continued his studies, and and he survived. He became a very prominent voice. He tried many jobs. He finally excelled with his dream, that is cinema. And in 1949, he married Bijoya Das, who was his first cousin and his longtime sweetheart. And they had a son, the couple had a son named Sandeep Ray, and he's a film director. Satyajit Ray, he directed over 36 films, which included documentaries, feature films, and even short films. And he worked prominently in Bengali cinema, and more than that, he is considered one of the greatest directors of world cinema. Now, even though we will be discussing one of his stories, it is good that you know about Satyajit Ray and his films, because he is an iconic figure in Indian cinema. Now, as we all know that, as we have known, that he was brought up amidst huge financial constraints. But again, you can call him a masterpiece because he gave rise to a cinematic movement actually. In fact, his first film, Pather Panjali, it was like a new movement of filmmaking in India. And this was a film which had realism as its core concerns. Realism was projected through this film, and the real life circumstances of of India, the problems, the perils, everything that was portrayed very realistically through that film. And it took over 4 years to complete that film. And in fact, Pater Panjali was actually an adaptation of a Bengali writer named, adaptation of a novel by a Bengali writer named Bibhudi Bhushan Bandyopadhyay. And his novel also had the same title. That novel was written in 1929, and Satyajit Ray made this film in 1955. And the film actually revolved around the everyday trials of a family. The family consisted of five people, and they lived in abject poverty in a village in Bengal, and they were trying to make both ends meet. And the film had two child protagonists, Appu and Durga. So the film explores the joy in the tiniest of incidents, the innocence of these children, and how they live and adapt and enjoy a life despite the difficult situations around them. So that is the story about Pader Panjali, that was translated as Song of the Little Road. Okay, Song of the Little Road. Now, this was followed in 1956 by the second in that trilogy named Aparijido. Aparijido was translated as the Unvanquished. The Unvanquished. And that is the second film in the Apo trilogy, and it traces the transformation of Appu from a child to an adolescent. And you see that the scene shifts from the village to Varanasi and then to Calcutta. Now, in this film, in this second film, you see the tension between the mother and son, Appu and his mother, because Appu is trying to move away from his family and he tries to settle down in a new place, and how his mother finds it so desperate, and how she longs for her son, and how she wants him to be back in their village and all those things. So uh, this is Aparijido, and it was the first film to win the Golden Lion and the Critics Award at the Venice Film Festival. The third film in the Apu trilogy was Apu Sansar, the world of Apu. And it is also an adaptation of the Bandhopadhyay's novel. And in that, Ray talks about the harsh reality of a huge section of Bengali youth in the middle of the 20th century. The problem was they had education but they were unemployed. Okay, and so all those conflicts and their frustration, that is what you see in Apur Sansar. So these three films just hit the mark, and it became a huge success, and that redefined Indian cinema. Okay, we attained world attention through these films. So that's why you call him as a very important writer. I mean, a filmmaker, a classical filmmaker, an iconic filmmaker of Indian film industry. Now, apart from this, he has also written several books, several novels, short stories for children as well as for adolescents, and he also has several created many important characters who has become part and parcel of world literature as well. So, we will be learning about one such character through a very interesting story by Satyajit Ray, and that is Professor Shonku and the UFO. Now, Professor Shonku, similarly, we have other characters by other fictional characters by uh, Satyajit Ray. One is Professor Shonku, then you have Feluda, then you have Nakur Chandra Vishwas, Newton. Newton is a pet cat of Shonku, which is aged 24. Okay, so likewise, you have so many interesting characters in his works. So, we'll be discussing a very interesting science fiction story, Professor Shonku and the UFO by Satyajit Ray. Okay. Science fiction stories are always uh, a very popular genre in literature, and we have many doyens in science fiction, like writers like Robert Silverberg, Arthur Clare, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and so on. And in that same avenue of science fiction, we also see Bengal's literary genius and also the Academy Award winning director Satyajit Ray. He also has tried his hand in science fiction and was able to create an astoundingly inimitable, versatile scientist character named Professor Shonku. And as I told earlier, he was inspired by Arthur Conan Doyle's um, character named Professor Challenger. Hmm. You find the story, The Lost World, in which Arthur Conan Doyle introduces a very uh, interesting character named Professor Challenger. So, inspired by that character, Satyajit Ray creates Professor Trilokeshwar Shonku. Now, this character is presented as a very inquisitive uh, academician who is shy of public appearance. He has a salt and pepper beard, and he hails from the Giridhi district of Jharkhand. Okay, and it was in the Spaceman's Diary which was published in 1961. It was the first story in which Satyajit Ray introduced this character, Professor Shonku. Okay, and after that, we see a series of stories based on this character. Now, in that first story, The Spaceman's Diary, you see that Professor Shonku invents a robot uh, invents a space ship or a rocket, and in which he travels to the space. So that's what the first story was about. And in later stories, you find that Professor Shonku he invents a robot, and he in another story he invents a weapon named the snuff gun. And this gun would make his enemies sneeze miserably for at least 33 hours. Okay, so it was used as a weapon against enemies so that they will continue to sneeze for 33 hours. Then another great feat of Professor Shongu, which is described in yet another story, is that, see, many humans suffer from lack of sleep, or something called insomnia. And you find that Professor Shonku invents a new sleeping pill, and it liberates humankind from the bane of insomnia. And Satyajit Ray always believed that every scientist is always assisted by a group of friends or colleagues, dedicated colleagues. And even here, in most of the stories of Professor Shonku, we see that he is assisted in all his scientific explorations by a dedicated circle of globally acclaimed friends who are also science researchers. And they include Wilhelm Kroll, Jeremy Saunders, then another Professor Somerville, and Dr. Sheng. So all these characters, you find them again in the story that we will be discussing also, Professor Shongu and the UFO. There also you find these characters. And another interesting thing is that this phenomenal character of Professor Shonku, uh, he is aloof, or he doesn't like any sort of materialism or negativity. He's a very positive person, and he always want to do something that would help the human beings and the earth as a whole. So all his cerebral prowess, all his capabilities, all his intelligence, it is always directed to the well-being of the humanity. So, like this, you find so many explorations, so many discoveries and inventions by Professor Shonku. So, all this become the stories or the series of science fiction stories that Satyajit Ray has written. For example, he is also credited with inventing. An instrument called microsonograph, and it is an instrument, it is a device by which all the minutest or the inaudible and ultrasonic noises, like even the ants cry, rose petals groaning, so all these rose petals groaning when they are torn, all these very slight noises which cannot be captured by human ear, that can be recorded using this device called microsonograph. And then another very interesting discovery was, he invented an annihilin pistol. And with this pistol, he can destroy evil. Okay, he can destroy evil. Then yet another important discovery was that he invented another device which can be used uh, to make yourself feel cool during hot scorching heat or during summer. And there was the yet another device again to make you feel warm when it was winter. So likewise, it was like a pill, like a tablet. Okay. And he has made his own aeroplane, named the Shanko plane. uh, okay. And so he can reach any island, any exotic island, anywhere through his aeroplane. So likewise, you have so many feats, so many interesting things, so many science vistas with Professor Shonku. So he is an incredible creation of Satyajit Ray. So I just told you all this because you need to get an idea about who is this character. Maybe you are knowing about this character for the very first time. So you should know what are or what sort of a person he is, what are his capabilities, how good he is at his profession, and all that. So, in the next class, we'll be discussing the story prescribed to you, Professor Shonku and the UFO. Thank you.